The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you on this Thursday morning, September 12th. We've got a big show planned for you. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective, all the different things that come into your life and go out of your life and swirl and change as a result of having someone in your family on the autism spectrum. This show is meant for parents, teachers, practitioners who are working with an individual on the autism spectrum, but also for those of you who yourselves are on the autism spectrum. And as many of you are writing in and saying, you qualify in both categories. We have more and more people who are either practitioners who are on the spectrum themselves, or their parents who've discovered that they also are on the spectrum and maybe didn't know it before. So we welcome all of you. If there's someone in your life that you care about with autism, then we know that there are some wonderful things happening in your life, but chances are there's some things that you're struggling with, things that you need answers to, services that you need to connect with, resources that you're desperately wanting, or you've got something to say. Something's going on and you found something that's working for you that you're proud of. We welcome all of that discussion here. That's really what we're here for, is to spread and disseminate good information that helps us all get to the place that we want to get to. I always like to remind you at the start of the show here that there are many different ways for you to connect with us. The show is really meant to be interactive, so we want you to participate with us. Emily's going to start to show you some of the ways that you can participate. I'm going to remind you that you can watch us live in more than one place, but one good place to watch us is at www.autism-live.com. When you go there, the show will be playing live, or you'll get a chance to see the most recent recorded episode. But by the way, you can pick other episodes on that site as well. And there's a white box that is active 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now you can put your cursor there, type, hit enter, and your questions, comments, suggestions show up here on my screen. And in our live show, we have an opportunity to address those things. We're a little bit behind on that. So if you said, I wrote something and you guys have not talked about it, stick with me. I'm gonna get to it all eventually. Some way, somehow, we're gonna get to all of it. And by the way, that is totally free, and you don't have to log in. Nobody is asking for your personal information. There's no credit card. I don't just hate, somebody says, sign up for this free thing. We just need your credit card, and we won't bill you for this amount of time, right? Or we won't bill you ever, but we just need your credit card. Or you just have to fill out so many different things and tell them everything about you, including your blood type. We don't participate in that. We just don't, because who has time for that, right? So you just go there, put your cursor there, type away, hit enter, and that's all you do. Now, the good thing about that is you don't have to go through all those steps. For some of you, though, you have information that you want us to get back to you directly. And if you do want us to do that, you can send us your email. Make sure that you connect it to the question. Sometimes I get just an email address and I don't know what the person is requesting. So let us know what it is you're requesting, and we'll try to get back to you in a timely fashion. Sometimes it's me that gets back to you. Sometimes I farm the question out to an expert that I know can address your question faster. And that takes them a little bit more time. If you feel like a week or even a week and a half has gone by and nobody answered, ask again, because it may have gotten caught up in our technology, and be patient with us because we want to serve you. So do participate, though, and let us know what we can do. Make sure that you're referencing what sometimes you guys refer on the overnight. You'll say, can she answer this question? I don't know which she it is, so I don't even know who to ask. So make sure that you're as clear as possible in your questions, what you need, what you saw that you have a question about, and what we can do to help you. That's really why we're here. I always remind you at the top of the show that I am not an expert in autism, and I'm not even gonna hope that in my lifetime I'm gonna be an expert in autism. I would say to you that I think it's more efficient for me to work on spreading information than becoming an expert in autism. Because I'm a mom. I am a mom whose son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He is now 10, and I got help. And hear what I said, I got help. My child got help, and I got help, and our family got help, and it has made all the difference. And we're in a place that I feel is a really good place. My child is doing so well. He has not recovered. I think if you met my child, you would recognize that there is something that is different about him. But my child is not going to have huge roadblocks in his life. He is going to go to college, and he's going to go very likely with a scholarship. Did you see that stupid grin I just got on my face? Because I'm so proud of him. You know, he came home. School has been, we're at what, like the 4th week of school now? And the third week of school, they moved his teacher, because, you know, that's such a good idea. And but he came home yesterday, and in his backpack, the other day he'd come home with a science test and he'd gotten a 97% on it. And yesterday he came home with a math test and 100%, which we celebrated. Let me just say, you know, we celebrated both of those things. So my child, and he's in a completely included 5th grade class. You gotta love that. And that would not have happened if my child hadn't gotten help. So I am determined, bound and determined, to help you get as much help in the direction that we possibly can for what you individually need, or what your family needs. Let's hook you up with the best possible information. It's not equal, it's not even. What I can say to one of you in one place and another in another place, it's not the same. And that keeps me up at night, breaks my heart, keeps me up at night. But everybody has some resources, and I want to hook you up to what is there so you can be doing the most that you possibly can, right? So, you know, keep the questions coming. Now, we like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day, the jargon du jour. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to make sense of it within our real world, not textbook sense of it, although we do cover that too. So, the jargon is intensive, and it can really overwhelm you. We're just taking it a little bit at a time, trying to have a little bit of fun with it. So our phrase for today is response cost. This is one, I always say it wrong. I always say the cost response, but it's response cost. Let's take a look at what our actual definition is. Response cost, when a stimulus is taken away as a consequence of behavior, and the effect is to reduce the frequency of the behavior. Okay. If you've been watching the show, this starts to make a certain amount of sense. I know initially when I used to look at these definitions and I would see stimuli or stimulus and I would be like, right? But after a time, right, it starts to be just another word in our lexicon. But let's look at our working definition here. Another way to make behavior less frequent, it is the name given for removing reinforcement from children when they exhibit inappropriate behavior or fail to comply. You're taking something away. Now, this technically is a punishment strategy. So, you know, if you say to your child, this morning, you know, there I was with my son, and he was supposed to be eating his breakfast, and he was excited and watching TV, and we're going to talk about what it was he was watching on TV in another segment. But frequently, my son will get caught up in what's happening on the TV, and he forgets to do the thing that he needs to be doing, which is like eating or getting dressed or, you know, getting his backpack together, whatever it is in the morning that he is brushing his teeth, all the different things that he needs to do. Sometimes he gets a little sucked into the television, and I need to prompt him and remind him, you know, you need to keep eating, right? And this morning, after I prompted him once and said, you need to keep eating, and then the next time I said to him, you need to keep eating because if you can't eat and watch the TV at the same time, I will have to turn off the TV, right? It makes a certain amount of sense. And I have had to pause or turn off the TV if he really just can't get it done. That's response cost. If you don't do this, then this is going to go away. It is a punishment strategy. It isn't as effective 9 times out of 10 as when we give a reward for doing something. So if I could get myself in the circumstance where I could say, you need to finish eating your breakfast before we turn on the TV, that would be much more effective. It would be a better teaching moment. I would be much more likely statistically to keep the behavior going. Part of the reason why he's 10 and I'm still having to do this is that I haven't rearranged our lives to the point where I can get to the carrot instead of the stick, right? I mean, let's just keep it real here. I just keep doing this, and it's, you know, it saves it in the moment. Yeah, he gets stressed in the moment, but then we have to do it the next day. And that's the problem with punishment strategies, and the problem with response costs is that a lot of times they just aren't going to get the behavior to where you need them to be and stay. We all need to be cognizant of that. However, you know, the problem is that I'm not willing to get up and to get him up early enough in the morning to the point where he can completely finish eating his breakfast and be dressed before I allow him a little bit of TV time. There's the reality of it. And so I rely on this response cost. At some point, I'm going to have to address it, right? But this week, it's not the most important thing in my life. And there are times that we will automatically jump back into old mindset and do response cost, and sometimes it's effective in the moment. But it's not a good long-term strategy for most kids, for most situations. We really need to get our head into the place of how can I turn this equation on its ear and offer a reward for having delivered the behavior. That is the thing that has been shown statistically to actually get the behavior to stick, stay, and be done without prompting, which is by the time he's 18, you know, my child needs to be able to get himself up and dressed and out the door without me standing over him reminding him, right? But it's not my biggest battle today, so we work on response costs. Okay, we always have a question of the day for you. Today is no different. We're asking you today, how do you cope with tantrums? What are you doing when a tantrum happens, and what's the self-talk that you do for yourself? And by the way, this can be, you know, I mentioned the other day that I have been known to have a tantrum myself. I'm going to laugh here now. You know, there's a spectrum of tantrums, right? But I have very good friends of my mother's who remind me that on the day that I went to get my driver's test, you know, because I had my permit and I had to go for the test. The first time that I went, something was wrong and we didn't have the registration. My mother's car was being worked at, so we had my sister's car. It didn't work out, right? So then I had to reschedule, and it took 3 months, and all I wanted was my license. And we got there and something else went wrong. Like the person who was supposed to do the test couldn't do the test. So we couldn't carry it. But my mom was there with her best friend. And to this day, my mom's friend will remind me that I was so mad. I was 16 years old and I was just so mad. And I said, I feel like a little kid. I want to lay down on the grass and just flail my arms and legs and scream and kick and do whatever. And my mother, because that's, you know, who and how my mother was like, go for it. I'll pull over. And we were in a part of town, the place where I grew up in Saratoga, New York, there is an area of town that is old Victorian mansions that are breathtaking with huge lawns. Not where I lived, right? But that's the area of town that we were in. I mean, just not the place where you would get out and get on somebody's lawn and throw a tantrum. But my mother sort of dared me. And so she pulled over the car and I got out and laid on the lawn and kicked and screamed. And it felt good. It felt good. And we're going to talk about, you know, that sometimes kids do tantrums because they feel good. It wasn't hurting anybody. Sometimes tantrums hurt people and it hurts our standing. Obviously, you know, if I were to do that at my job and just lay down in the middle of the floor and kick my legs and scream, people's impression of me would change, right? And that would not be reinforcing to me. But so the question here, though, it can be, how do you deal with your own tantrums? How do you deal with your child's tantrums? How do you deal with the feelings that you have while your child is tantruming? Because that's a whole other issue of Oprah magazine, isn't it? So write and tell us. I'm going to be checking in a little bit later on our Facebook page to see what you guys have said. Remember that when you write in and say honestly, it helps inform other people so that they realize, oh my gosh, I'm I'm not the only person who feels like I'm a complete and total failure when my child is having a tantrum in public and I feel that everybody's judging me. Or, oh my gosh, I'm not the only person who, does this. Or you might have come up with a great thing, a great mental vacation that you go on that informs somebody else and teaches them a coping mechanism that they'll have the rest of their lives. So participate. We do always have a topic of the week, and as I'm sure you've guessed already, our topic this week, we're talking all this week, tantrums and meltdowns. Because as much as it's not fun to talk about these things, when we get a grip on what's happening, what we have control over, what we don't have control over, and what some of the little warning signs are and how we can head things off at the pass, it makes these things more manageable, less often, and smaller in scope. That obviously, I don't have the tantrums that I had when I was 2, right? I've been known to throw a little hissy from here to there. Not like I did when I was 2, right? And my son, he doesn't have tantrums anymore. And I won't say, there's like mini meltdowns. We had a little mini situation on Saturday night that I'll talk about later on, but it's so manageable, so very manageable. And that's really where we need to get for all of us. So we're going to talk about that. Some of the different things that we have going on here today in the show. We promised you that great stuff with Ashley, and we promised it to you last week. And here's the long and the short of it. We're not going to have Ashley here today. And Ashley is about to be married, and we wish her all the best. And I think once Ashley comes back from the honeymoon, we're going to have Ashley back, and we wish her all the very best because she's a very happy, very busy bride at the moment. We do have a school tip for you, and then a little bit later on today, we have Breaking It Down with Angela Persicke, who is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, is going to be with us. I've already given her some of the questions that you guys wrote in over the weekend. I know there have been some new ones in the last 24 hours. We'll see if we have time to get to those as well. But if you wrote in a question days ago, there's a great likelihood that either Angela is going to answer it, or we have Dr. Nadowski coming tomorrow and Dr. Jonathan Tarbox coming tomorrow, and I've already given them ahead of time a bunch of the questions. So we're going to move and shake on this. We're going to get some answers out there. Okay, so all of this and more, we've got a lot of exciting stuff going on today, so you'll want to stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey guys, for the month of September, I figured I'd show you guys how to make a task completion chart to help your kids get through the hardest parts of the day. Parents have been writing into our host, Shannon Penrod, that the hardest parts of the day are waking up in the morning, after school, and getting ready for bed. Please keep in mind you can always modify the task completion chart to focus on the skills that your family needs most. The template we'll be using today to make the task completion chart you can find at facebook.com/autism-live. All right, let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are the template, cardstock, scissors, hole puncher, glue, pipe cleaner, Velcro, and photos or images. We find it more reinforcing for kids if you use images of themselves doing the tasks that you're trying to get them to complete. So what I have here to start off are photos of myself doing all the tasks that we're going to add to our task completion chart today. The first step you're going to be doing is printing the template from facebook.com/autism-live. I have it here, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim at the top. We don't need that, that's just totally excess. Now that I trim my 3 templates, I'm going to label each one with a different part of the day that we're focusing on, such as waking up, after school, and getting ready for bed. Now that I finished labeling the templates with the appropriate time of the day, I'm going to attach the photos that go with it. For bedtime, the tasks I chose were getting ready for school, putting away toys, putting on pajamas, and brushing teeth. Now repeat this for all the rest of the day. Now that I've added the photos to the template, I am taking this along with my heavy cardstock to hold all my tokens. I'm going to line them up and make 3 hole punches. I'm going to take this pipe cleaner and attach the pages together with it. almost done putting this together. Next, I'm going to take my Velcro, I'm going to put them underneath each picture. And then I'm going to add 4 on the very edge too. Now that I've attached the rough side of the Velcro to the template, now I'm going to take the softer side and add these to the tokens. You can use whatever you want for the tokens, whatever your child finds reinforcing. They could be stickers, images, spacemen, Pokemon, whatever they like. Before you use your task completion chart, it's really important that you do a preference assessment to see what your child finds reinforcing that day. Once you have that established, then you can tell them the rule for how this task completion chart works. So every time they get one of their tasks completed, they add a token to it. And the way the task completion chart functions is like a token economy. So after they put a token under each one of these tasks, they can trade it in for their reinforcer for the day. Now that you've made your task completion chart, hopefully your child will be able to use it on a daily basis and help them through those difficult times of the day. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. On Thursdays, we like to showcase great stuff, and today is no different. I brought in today with me, and I think we've talked about it a little bit before, but this is an amazing tool. And if you don't have one of these in your home, I want to urge you to get one of these. And if it's outside the scope of what you can afford, although there are lots of used copies that are available of it, but apply for a grant from ACT Today. And we'll talk to the company. Maybe we can get some of these to give away. But this is an amazing tool. So many of you have written in and said, how do I get my child off of something that they're watching that isn't age appropriate? Like some of you have said Baby Einstein or Thomas the Tank Engine, that you want your child to be watching something and you love being able to put something on and be able to get a meal together and have your child just focused on it, but that you'd like a component of it being educational. Well, this is it all wrapped up in one. It's pretty spectacular. I was thinking about this morning because I was sitting there on the sofa with my son, and this is what was in the DVD player. And we were having a great time. And every morning in the last week, he's been picking a different topic. This morning, it was all the science ones. I don't know if you know this, because it depends on how old you are. When I was a kid, this first came out, and we loved it then. But there have been so many more that were made after the time that I was watching them. So if you haven't visited Schoolhouse Rock in a long time, there's a whole set of them that are on money and how to deal with money that are amazing. We watched those yesterday. This morning we were watching all the science ones, and my son was watching and asking questions and saying, oh, that's so cool. That's what that is. It's really a beautiful thing. And you can put it so that it's a play all, that it plays on an endless loop, and there's so many of them that it would take more than 2 hours to go through all of them. Or you can just focus on a certain area and let the child, as a reward, pick which one they want. That's what we've been doing. This is amazing. And your child is learning things, and I would bet you that some of our older kids that are watching things like Baby Einstein, because they're really being gratified by the music and by the images, will find this exciting too. So check it out, Schoolhouse Rock. This happens to be the special 30th anniversary edition, and it includes absolutely all of the ones that they have. Don't you remember Conjunction Junction, What's Your Function? And this is I'm Just a Bill. I'm Only a Bill Standing on Capitol Hill. Love these. They are a family favorite. So check it out, Schoolhouse Rock. This one is brought to you by Disney. An amazing DVD set. Get one. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come right back with more Autism Live after these messages.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman from Taka here to do some more cooking. Are you ready? Allergy-friendly fun, and I've got a guest.
I'm Jamie Davis. Yes, I'm her sister.
Today we're all about cooking something really fun and healthy. That's a dessert. We're going to actually use carrots real carrots, and we're going to talk about how to make the best tasting carrot cake you could ever hope for. So it's really easy. You don't want to buy the carrots that are the baby carrots. Why?
Well, those aren't really carrots. What they do is they take carrots, they mush them all up, they take whatever the carrot looks like, they throw it in a bin, they bleach them, and they process them, and then they have a little machine that makes them into little formed baby carrots. So they're really not born that way.
So this is what a carrot really looks like?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good to know. So I just want to show everybody how to make really simply. We just washed off the carrots. They were really dirty from the farmer's market. And we're going to throw them in to our food processor. So what's good about the food processor is that we can go for a really fine grade. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 3 cups of carrots. Then the next thing I'm going to pull in is our gluten-free, casein-free flours. I'm using a protein-based flour. Bob's Red Mill is great. I also have my flaxseed meal and pure cane sugar that's organic. I cut it down already, so you don't need to cut it again.
And one of the reasons why we like to use organic sugar is because, once again, most sugars on the market are bleached to make them look perfect.
Yeah, we don't like perfect.
No.
We like ours.
That's why we like each other.
All right, so we've added our baking soda, baking powder, xanthan gum, nutmeg, and salt. Now, again, why we use the gums is that's the ingredient that actually holds the flour together. Regular flour automatically has that gluten. This is the replacement to the gluten. These are the secret ingredients for the cake itself. 3/4 cup of the crushed pineapple is in there. That gives it a beautiful texture and flavor. And now what I'm using is the oil. What are your favorite oils, Jamie?
I like using coconut oil any chance I
Yes.
get. In fact, coconut oil would be excellent in a carrot cake.
Now what I did was I reserved a little bit of the oil and we placed it in the bottom of that pan so it doesn't stick.
Yep.
But we love the baking stones.
Yes.
Why do we love the baking stones?
Evenly cooks
Yes.
and easy cleanup.
If you like crispy, you got to get a baking stone. I also feel that they're less toxic. So now I'm going to cook this thing at 350 for about 35 minutes. You really want to get it golden. Let's get it in there. Awesome. So now that we got our cake all done, let's get on with the frosting. Coconut oil, probably the best thing in the world you can eat. It's so good for your brain. It's one of the best oils that we can use. So I'm going to use 1/3 cup of the coconut oil. And then we're going to do 1 teaspoon of an organic vanilla, Madagascar, and make sure it's alcohol free. And then what we're going to do is add 16 ounces of organic powdered sugar. And we're going to add our 4 to 6 tablespoons of coconut milk. I'm using the whisk version here on the KitchenAid, which will give it a nice mix. All right, so if you get any on the sides, you just come on in with your little spatula, and this makes the best frosting for the cake. So we're almost done whipping it up, and voila, we are talking good stuff right here. We have the best situation for the best birthday cake, especially if you want to deal with something that perhaps has a little less sugar. You've got a great cake that no one will know the difference. I'm not a decorator. I don't like to decorate. I just want to eat it, and I don't care what it looks like. Ask my family. I'm a family with autism. I just want to eat the cake. Are you ready to do this? It can be your birthday. Yay! So to me,
goodness,
this
so good.
is so good. It's meant to be gooey, as you can see. But what I love about this is a great birthday cake with extra frosting to make your kids happy. A little less sugar and a lot of love. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com, and on Facebook.com/autismlive. And then you can reach me and Jamie and get some more ideas from the taco recipe side. So let's have some more
You
cake.
say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I wanted to take just a second to tell you a very exciting thing that is going to happen. I was just telling Emily that I shared on the show a couple of weeks ago that I love the Monkees. When I was a child, the Monkees were everything to me. It was the biggest deal, and Mickey Dolenz in particular. I'm going to get a stupid grin on my face. But to the point where, as a child, I am still in possession in my life, all the places I've moved, I'm still in possession of a letter that I wrote to Mickey Dolenz. I think I was 5 or 6 years old, begging him to please not get married until I was old enough that he could marry me. Still have this letter. So I just have adored Mickey Dolenz forever. I still think that some of the Monkees music is some of the best music ever done, and I listen to it in my car a lot. And my husband knew this. There were 3 years ago, I guess it was, the Monkees had reunited and they were going to play here in Los Angeles, and they were playing on my anniversary, our wedding anniversary. And my husband and I were going to go, but they were having something called Carmageddon in Los Angeles, where they were going to shut down the biggest freeway in Los Angeles, the main artery, and they were telling everyone to stay home that weekend. And I literally cried over it because there was no way that we were going to be able to get to this concert. And so we didn't go, and I said, that's okay, we'll go another time, we'll just go another time. And then of course Davy Jones died, and that was a very sad thing, and he went way before his time, he should have. But then the 3 remaining Monkees were touring this last summer, and my fabulous husband won me tickets for us to go to a concert to see the Monkees. And I was so excited about it, and all summer long we were so thrilled about it. But then of course the date of the concert was the same day that the night that they were having my son's back to school night, the opportunity for the kids to come to the classroom, meet the teacher, get used to the classroom, see the other kids that are going to be in the classroom the night before to set them up for the next morning. And it just happened to be the same night as the Monkees concert. And I had that moment of, what will I do? Right? But like a good autism parent, I went, sell the tickets. We won't go to the Monkees. And my husband was like, no, don't be ridiculous. You go to the Monkees. I'll take him to school. And I said, I can't do it. I cannot do it. This is too important. This is one of those things that you have to go to. And I need to be there with him, and I need to set the example to him that this is so important, that school is so important. I want him to, I have to go. I can't. And the concert was too far away. There was no possibility that I could be in both places at the same time. And I said, that's all right. Okay, that's fine. I will tell you that I did pursue asking the Monkees while they were in town to come and be on the show, because one of the Monkees has Asperger's, and I said, come and be on the show, and we'd love to talk to you about it. This will be so exciting. And they never answered, and they were busy and they were on tour, and it wasn't them as much as their PR person who never answered. All right, we're not holding grudges. And I let it go. It was one of those big things in life where I let it go, and I said, it has been my life's ambition. And I said to my husband, even if we went to the concert, let's be honest, we would have seen the concert and that would have been awesome, but I really want to meet Mickey Dolenz, and that's not going to happen. I'm letting that go. And, I was just saying to Emily that there are like 2 people in life that throughout my life I have most wanted to meet. And, it's Oprah and Mickey Dolenz, okay? We all have our people, right? But Oprah and Mickey Dolenz. And I let go of Mickey Dolenz about a week and a half ago, and I said, it's just not going to happen. This is not happening. And then last night, a little after midnight, when I finally laid my head down on the pillow, and I usually check, what's happening on Facebook, one of my very best friends from college that I'm still very good friends with, who is a motivational speaker and has these amazing boot camps. It's called the Rockstar System for Success. Excuse me. His name is Craig Duswalt. We have to give him his due. He has these amazing 4-day events, and people come, and there's motivational speakers, and they do all kinds of different things on them. And we typically, my family goes at least one day of the seminar, and because we have lots of friends that are there and meet people, and he always has a rock star that you see where this is going. He always has a rock star every time he does, and he's had many people there before, and Eddie Money and people like that, and which it's like very exciting to other people. It hasn't been that exciting to me personally. And on his Facebook last night, he announced who his rock star is. Yes, it's Mickey Dolenz. Mickey Dolenz is coming to his event next week, and I lost my mind. I woke my husband up, and I said, Mickey Dolenz is coming. And, you know, and they then called me this morning and said, hey, you know, you're going to come, right? You're going to come and meet Mickey Dolenz. So I get to go and meet Mickey Dolenz. And it was one of those amazing just things that happen in life. And it reminded me about how sometimes when we let go of things and say, you know, that's not going to happen, and I'm just going to be an adult about that and get over it, things plop into your lap. So I'm not going to the Monkees concert, but I'm getting to meet Mickey Dolenz next week. And I put that out there as a little hopeful thing, because who knew that was going to happen? And I remind all of us that anything could happen at any time. I'd love to know from you guys, who do you most want to meet in life? Who do you most want to talk to? Because maybe we can get them here on the show and you guys can have conversations with them. I don't know. Let's you know, who knows what could happen. But I am going to try not to talk about it endlessly. And I said I have to be very careful in the next week that nothing happens. I can't get in a car accident. You know what I mean? Because I am apparently going to get to meet Mickey Dolenz next week. I am beside myself. I want to cry like a Girl Scout. But tell me, write in and tell me on the Facebook, or write in on the live feature and tell me, who's your be-all end-all? Who do you want to meet? Let's dream a little. Maybe it could happen. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with a school tip. Stick with us.
And we are here for our inclusion film camp for military children with autism and their siblings.
It was great. We had quite a few returning, but 30 new kids. It was great. We're creating a network, the Inclusion Network, and all these kids are unbelievable. It just gets better and better every year.
Joey Travolta suggested me that I get to teach the animation to some of the people on the autism spectrum. The software I am teaching them is called Flipboom Cartoon, which is a basic animation software. My favorite part of the teaching is to see Buddy's best work and their special abilities.
It means a lot to feel like I'm on my show. And I'm proud to see him so social and just not shy anymore. And I think that's really been important to me. Just he's blossomed, and I'm just so proud to see that.
Did you love the camp?
Yes, I did very much.
This camp is like a really good book that you don't want to end.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're talking right now about a school tip, and all this week we've been talking about tantrums and meltdowns. And I don't think that there's anything worse. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of things that are bad, but on the list of bad things is when your child has a tantrum or a meltdown at school. A lot of parents will say, you know, it's like feast or famine. It's one or the other, that their kids tend to have their tantrums one place or the other, home or at school. So if you're somebody who your child is tantruming at school, it's likely that you're having that happen frequently. Or it's more like, or you're the other side of the coin that you say, you know, my child almost never has a tantrum at school. They're mostly at home. And I think it's really important to start to distinguish, you know, and say, oh, wait a second, where are these tantrums happening? Because you start to look at clues. For the kids who don't have tantrums at school, a lot of times it's because the structure is there and they know what's coming. Because you got a good teacher who's on it. There's a visual schedule that's on the board. Even there are teachers who are effective on it, teachers in high school who list on the board, this is what we're doing today, or put on the smart board, or just hang up whatever. There are teachers who will say, these are the standards that we're working on today. And that helps our kids, it helps all kids be able to say, all right, this is what's happening right now, and they can settle into it. Even if it's something that they don't want to do that's coming up, they see that there is an end to it, that after that, we're going to go on to this. So I think, if we were to generalize, kids who don't have tantrums at school, one of the big reasons why is because they understand what's expected of them and what's going to happen. So if your child is having tantrums at school, one of the first things that I would tell you to look at, besides keeping track of what's happening right before the tantrum happens, I think that's the crucial thing, but looking at all of the environments in which your child is having the tantrum and asking yourself, are there visual cues about what's happening, what's expected to happen, and what will happen after this is happening? Even on most of the children's programming network, if you watch Nickelodeon, they'll be playing the program, and on the lower third across the bottom it says now, and it's got a little disc showing the icon of what show that you're watching, and then it says then, and there's another one that says so that they start to know, Last Airbender is on now, and then this is what's going to happen after that, and then they have one that says later, and it shows them a disc of what the next show will be. We need to be doing that in all of our classrooms. And if your child's teacher or teachers are not doing that, that is such a simple fix. That's something that you can recommend and say to the teacher in a very kind and loving way, is there a way that we can have that up on the board? It doesn't have to be a thing where you're shaming the teacher into it, but it can be at an IEP meeting, and you can even have it written into the IEP that there be visual schedules. And again, it can be as simple as having it down on the chalkboard. The truth of the matter is that all teachers should be doing that. And so if you just say it at the IEP meeting and say, hey, can we make sure that we have visual schedules? Everybody at the table is going to go, oh, well, yeah, of course, absolutely. That will happen no matter what. But it doesn't hurt to remind them, right? And then sometimes, if you do it before the fact, then there doesn't have to be can you institute this now? If the school year has already started now and the teacher doesn't have it up and you see that the child's having problems, that'd be the first place that I would start. Absolutely, there's other things to look at, but having a visual schedule can tame a lot of that. A little bit later on in the program, we'll talk about tantrums at home and tantrums in public, but tantrums at school, if you can get that under control, then you can do what needs to happen at school, which is the education component and the socialization component. It makes it much, much easier. So that's our school tip for the week. Stick with us. We're going to come back and look at your answers to the question of the day. How do you cope with tantrums? Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We ask you a question every day. Our topic this entire week is tantrums and meltdowns, and our question today was, how do you cope with tantrums? And you guys wrote in, and I think it's really important as we talk about tantrums to talk about the fact that there are 3 separate components, right? There's before the tantrum, there's during the tantrum, and there's after the tantrum. And what I was kind of getting at was, what do you do during the tantrum? But, you know, I think it's important that we talk about all 3 parts of that. So let's look at some of the different things that you guys have written in. Somebody wrote in and said, whenever possible, minimization, diffusing, humor, and alternative creative thinking, ways to get around and learn from them. Pretty amazing. Minimization, diffusing, humor, alternative creative thinking, ways to get around and learning from them. Great ideas. And that's already getting lots of thumbs up. Somebody else who said not very well, and, you know, giving a wink and a smile. They're hard. Tantrums are tough. And I don't think anybody goes, oh, yay, another tantrum. So I think all of us have at least once suffered from the fact of going, oh man, this is kicking my keister. Somebody else wrote in and said, to be honest, can't really do much during the tantrum apart from letting the children calm down. However, usually there's lots of signs showing up before the tantrum. I'd suggest developing a good communication with the children using visual schedules, which we just talked about, and sign language, briefing the children before the change of routine, as well as using positive reinforcement. Those are all good strategies to prevent tantrums. And most of all, keep our promises and mean what we say. Yeah, because we, you know, and she really hit on all 3 things there. The fact that during the tantrum, we don't have a whole lot that we can do, right? Except giving them an opportunity to calm down and make sure that they're safe, and keeping ourselves calm and not making it worse, right? That's pretty much what we're capable of doing during the tantrum. But there are a lot of things that we can do before the tantrum to see the signs of the tantrum coming and to head it off. There are strategies that we can do, like the visual schedules, and giving a child reinforcement for transitioning well, and giving them notice when they're about to transition to something else. Super duper important that we find a way to communicate with them what's happening and what the expectations are. And then she brings up the last part, which is keeping our promises and do what we say. That's the consequence part, that whatever is happening, that end part, we're making sure that it's consistent. That if we say to the child, you're going to get something, that they get that, right? And if we say to a child, you're not going to get that, that they don't get that. Keeping it really, really consistent. Have you ever had to spend time with somebody whose behavior is so erratic? What am I saying? Of course we have. We've all been this way with our children on the autism spectrum. It's exhausting, right? That you're always looking for, well, if I do this, then this is the response that I expect. And sometimes when people behave in a way that's outside the realm of that, it's exhausting. Well, we want to make sure that we're not being that person to our kids. They should know, I behave in this way, this is the response. You know, going back to the model of when you have the mice in the cage and they're doing scientific experiments and they're teaching them something, and the mouse goes over and touches the bar and food comes down, right? So the mouse will go over, touch the bar again, food comes down, and the mouse learns, I touch the bar, food comes down. They've done horrible studies where they put the mice in those containers and they randomize so that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And if they do that long enough and there's no rhyme or reason to it, the mice get depressed and sometimes show signs of psychotic behavior because nothing makes sense. We all need for stuff to make sense. So we'll be the people in our children's lives that are consistent. And that's a really good thing to do. Christina Guzman, who we've had on the show, wrote in and said, of her children, one had them and one didn't. The one that did would have complete meltdowns. In retrospect, it was due to being sleepy, tired, or just not feeling well. That could have been food allergies, coming down with a cold, etc. When our kids are little, we have to be detectives and figure out what the culprit is. When it got really bad, I would put him in his car seat and go for a ride, and he would usually be out within minutes. Soothing music and baths also helped. And somebody else wrote, that's interesting because bath time is usually the reason for a tantrum in my house. We find if we let him get on with it, he gives up. So I think, and my understanding is that, you just get him in the bathtub anyway, and eventually the tantrum is over because, you're just not feeding the tantrum, and he's taken the bath. The tantrum couldn't escape the bath. And that's, again, important consequence, knowing why somebody's behaving a certain way and following through on the consequence. If the child is tantruming every time you go to put them in the bath, because at one point we stopped, we went to put the child in the bath, the child was tantruming and we stopped, then the child goes, oh, that works, right? And now you got to go like 10, 20 times of not letting him stop, getting him in the bath, despite the fact that he's tantruming, which can be really difficult because children in water, safety issue, and if they're tantruming, extra safety issue, right? But there are ways that you can do it and be safe and make sure that you get them in the bath so that the tantrum, if they're trying to do it to get out of going in the bath. And eventually you just won't have that tantrum anymore. But I think these are really great because you're hitting on all of these different subjects. If we make sure that we set up ourselves for success and we set our kids up for success by making sure that they get enough rest and that they aren't over hungry, that we're not letting their blood sugar dip, right? We're going to be less likely to have tantrums and especially less likely to have meltdowns. There are times when circumstances intervene and you can't fix what has gone off the tracks. Your child was kept up because the neighbor's car alarm went off, or they had a fire, or whatever. It was not due to your planning why your child did not get sleep, but still you're left with a child who's sleepy and, or not feeling well, and you're headed towards a meltdown. But it's important to start to recognize those symptoms, and if it's within your control, morph it, change it, do the best you can. If it's outside your control, then you got to change what demands you're putting on a child. So if you know that the child didn't eat for whatever reason past the time they were supposed to, whatever happened. I mean, stuff happens, right? We all know stuff happens. And you couldn't get lunch in. The child didn't get to sleep because the car alarm from the apartment next door went off, so the child doesn't have sleep. This isn't the day that you're going to have the discussion about the bath, right? If you know that the child has a tantrum every time you go in the bath, and you've already got 2 strikes working against you, the child is tired and the child is hungry, he's not going to get a bath today. He might get a nice wipe down with a washcloth, and we're going to be done, right? We pick and choose our battles knowing what we have on board. We do that for ourselves. If I'm extra tired and I've got more stuff going on, then I'm going to be extra gentle with myself, and that's not the day that I'm going to decide to start training for a marathon. It's a certain amount of common sense, but sometimes we're tired and these things don't occur to us. It doesn't make us bad parents. It just means that somebody else can remind us, hey, maybe today is not the day that you're going to take that on. Maybe today we're just going to simplify and do what needs to be done to just maintain. And that's enough for today. Really important things to consider. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about tantrums, about, again, what we do in the moment and trying to head it off at the pass and those consequences. We'll be right back. Stick with us.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
Talk a little bit about about intensity.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So we've been talking about tantrums and meltdowns, and we're going to continue to talk about them when we have Angela Persicke come in the next hour. But I want to go back to basics so that nobody gets confused. Whenever we talk about any behavior, and we talk about behavior as a means of communication, that's all it is a means of communication. And when people are behaving in a way that is not acceptable, we have to ask ourselves, what are they trying to communicate? And is it that they don't have another way to communicate? And whenever we look at behavior, we look at the A, the B, and the C of it, the ABCs of behavior. The A stands for antecedent. It's what happened right before the behavior. Then there's the B, there's the behavior, and then there's the C, the consequence. And every single behavior that you and I are engaged in right now and that we will be engaged in throughout our lives and throughout our day has an A and a B and a C. We just don't stop to think about it that much. But it's true for us. It's also true for every single person living, breathing, whether they are on the autism spectrum or they are not on the autism spectrum. And when President Obama behaves a certain way, there is an A, a B, and a C. And when Newt Gingrich behaves in a certain way, there is an A and a B and a C to go with each behavior. And by the way, what we have been able to see as scientists have looked at hundreds of years of behavior and taken data on it is that people don't continue to behave in a way unless there are consequences that are favorable for them. I call it the paycheck. The behaviorists call it reinforcement. There has to be some sort of reinforcement. Dr. Phil says this too. What's the paycheck? What's the paycheck for the behavior? Because we won't do it. Science has shown time and time again, unless there is a paycheck for the behavior, somebody might be able to force themselves to do it for a period of time, but it won't maintain. They won't stick with it. It's the reason why, people don't keep exercising. It's the reason why people don't stay on diets. If it's not reinforcing enough, you won't keep doing it. So great, this is power, this is information. What we do know is that behavior itself is really difficult to change, but changing the antecedent, the before, and changing the consequence are often much easier to change. And when we do that, that is when we see a natural change in behavior. So as we look at tantrums and meltdowns, here's a behavior we want to see less of. We want to diminish them or even extinguish them, make them go away. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the paycheck for this behavior? And how much control do we have over the things that happen right before the behavior, and how much control do we have for the things afterwards? Now think of it this way, because all kids are going to tantrum. They just are. For the child who, maybe kids don't have extreme tantrums, but all children will tantrum or whine or carry on at some point. Why? Why is this a natural part of development? Because if you stop and think about it, they are not born with functional communication. They don't have the means when they are 2 weeks old to say, hey, I'm cold, my diaper is wet, and you haven't fed me in 2 hours and I'm feeling hungry, right? They don't even have enough language to know that's what they're feeling. They just know they feel uncomfortable. And what does that 2-week-old baby do? They cry. They cry. It's their functional means of communication. They cry and they fuss because they're uncomfortable, and we rush in and we start changing things. And if you've had a baby, you know that, they say, look, your baby is crying. You got to look at these 4 things, right? Is your baby gassy? And if they are, you're going to, do this and, pat them on the back and have them burp so that they get less uncomfortable. Is your baby's temperature okay? Are they hot? Are they cold? Do you need to put a blanket on? Do you need to take a blanket off? Is their bum wet or poopy? And, do you need to change that diaper? And then the last one is, do they need to be fed? These are the 4 things that you go, oh, something's wrong with my baby. I got to try these 4 things. I don't know which one. There are people who say this cry means this. I think that's amazing. I hope that they, really narrow that down and that it works for people. But for, hundreds of years, we've known baby cries, I do one of these 4 things because one of these 4 things is up, right? But a transition time comes in the child's development where they begin to find ways to communicate with us. They point to something and they start to babble and they get a paycheck for babbling, and over time their babbling starts to take form and they get the thing that they asked for, right? And then they're reinforced by it. Oh, if I go blah blah and you give me a cookie, then I'm going to say blah blah and I'm going to work harder on it, and eventually I'm going to say cookie because I get a paycheck for saying cookie. Except sometimes that doesn't happen. And a lot of times that doesn't happen with our kids with autism because cues are missed along the way. They, the 3 precursors before they got to that point didn't happen. And it's different with different kids. But the confluence of events that happen that arrive at a neurotypical child beginning to what we call mand and ask for the thing, which by the way takes a lot less energy than just crying for it, right? And so then the child goes, hey, paycheck's better. If I go blah blah, you're all happy and smiles and you give me the cookie and I don't have to throw myself on the floor. Well, that step, that series of steps sometimes just doesn't happen with our kids on the spectrum. So all kids are going to tantrum until they have that big moment where they get it. Wow, all I have to do to get what I want in life is communicate with you. And if that doesn't happen, I'm going to keep tantruming because it's my only way. It's the only way I have to tell you, I don't like what's happening here. I don't want to do this. I feel uncomfortable. I'm unhappy. This is the way that it's been working for me. And it's difficult for all kids to make the transition because if something's been working for you and you're going to try something else, you're going to go through a transition period, right? And from time to time, you're going to revert back to the old way. But over time, when the new way works better, you let go of the old way, which is what we have to be mindful of with our kids with autism, is that we're going to teach them the new way and we're going to make it rewarding. We're going to make it rewarding so that they want to keep doing it the new way, so that the old way of tantruming will go away. When you start to think of behavior and tantrums and meltdowns in that way, it gets exciting because it empowers you. It doesn't make you the victim of, oh no, I just had this kid with autism and this is going to be the rest of my life. My child is just going to have these tantrums because that's what autism is. Baloney. That's not in the DSM-4 and that's not in the DSM-5. It is not a part of the criteria. It isn't. Because, and you can see kids who get the right amount of therapy and the parents really start to take these kinds of ideas to heart, those kids don't tantrum. They just don't. They will for a period of time, and then it's basically over. So we all need to get on this mindset. What's being communicated? How can I teach the functional communication for it? How can I make sure that how can I make communicating with me more rewarding for my child than having to throw a tantrum? And we talk about that all the time here on the show. So we're going to take a break now and go to the A Word. This is an ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And by the way, check out this series because there are many times that Jack Riley had tantrums and even meltdowns that were captured on video. And I just had a lovely outing with him and my son at the zoo with his dad. And there we were with 2 kids with autism, one of them 5, one of them 10. And there were no tantrums, there were no meltdowns. And it was so hot that I think myself and some of the crew, we would have gleefully thrown a tantrum or had a meltdown. It was ripe for meltdown. It was that hot. But there were no tantrums and there were no meltdowns. And we can get you all to that point. It takes some work and it takes changing your mind shifts. But anyway, take a look. This is the A Word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Exciting.
I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
I'm Christine, and I've been with CARD for 2 weeks now.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a senior therapist on the case.
I'm training, and I have an overlap with Jack Riley today. This is my third overlap.
For training new therapists, they normally do 20 hours of training at the office or e-learning.
E-learning is video clips, basically preparing you for overlaps, preparing you for how to do programs.
And then they do about 8 to 9 overlaps in the field to get a hands-on feel of the therapy training that they learned and to work with a child one-on-one. So like the first overlap would be them just purely just observing, and then as the overlaps go on, the therapist is given opportunities to actually do the programs, do behavior interventions on their own. So which one did you want to do?
I was going to do this one.
Locations. Okay. Yeah, so he's still in math trial, so do errorless learning for that one.
How long has he been doing fire station?
This would be his 4th term.
Where do you see a fire hose at a fire station?
At a fire station.
So it has a hand?
Fire hose is
Where do you see a fire hose?
At a fire station.
Good job.
After 8 or 9 overlaps, they do a field eval. And that includes the therapist actually running the whole session purely on their own without any help from us. And when they pass, then they get put on schedules and get put to work with other kids. And if they don't pass, then they do more training and then they take the field eval again.
Where do you see a fire truck? Can you look at me, Jack Riley? Where do you see a fire truck?
At a fire station.
Good job.
So like from there with the fading of prompts, that was great. So you prompted in full
And then I just
verbal,
knew that I
partial
could
verbal, and
back
then
away.
yeah.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Joining us in the studio right now is BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Angela Persicke. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
We call this segment Breaking It Down with Angela. And by the way, before I forget, because you were just watching the A Word, if you want to see that whole series, make sure you go to their YouTube channel. You can watch the whole series from beginning to end. Well, not end, just where it is right now because it's ongoing. But we have Angela with us right now, and we've had so many questions come in the last week, and we're going to start to address some of them. And Angela, as I mentioned, is a board certified behavior analyst. She has extensive experience working with children on the autism spectrum. She works in the research department here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, but you are also the assistant director of the Autism Research Group, which is a lovely thing and a great credential for someone as young as you are. But she has been working, despite how young she looks and is, she's been working for many years with children on the autism spectrum and is a great resource for us and helping us to break things down. We've been talking about tantrums and how you got to break stuff down to be able to see clearly what's happening. So we're going to talk about all that, but I want to get to some of these questions that you guys have sent in, and the first one is like the $64,000 question. What is autism? And I can't wait to see what you say, because people ask me this all the time, and I always struggle with, what is the elevator answer, the short answer to this? What is autism? So,
of course, like you said, it's very complex and it's a spectrum disorder. And so there are so many, it manifests in so many ways, but the elevator answer, the very short sentence is that it's a developmental disorder characterized by deficits in communication and socialization and the presence of restrictive or repetitive patterns of behavior or interests.
Wow. Say that again, because I got to remember it when people ask me.
So, the first, it's developmental disorder.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. And
developmental disorder.
Yes. And is characterized by deficits in communication and socialization. So this refers a lot to how the child interacts with others and communicates with others, and a lot of social aspects for communication specifically. And then
also the presence of repetitive or restricted interests and patterns of behavior.
Okay, so those are those behaviors that we see sometimes the kids, sometimes we call them stereotypical behaviors. Yes. It's like the hand flapping, the lining up the cars, spinning.
Exactly,
those kinds of things.
And also inflexibilities, insistence on sameness, and insistence on routines, and sometimes some ritualistic behavior as well is also included in that category. And this also looks a lot like incredible emotional outbursts when things change.
Okay.
So that's also included in that restrictive patterns of behavior.
Okay, there we have it. That is the answer to what is autism. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to continue on to talk with Angela and answer some of your questions and maybe illuminate some of the things that we just listed. So stick with us.
Hi, I'm Bryce Myler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, we have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer, how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back to Autism Live. In the studio with us is Persicke. We're so thrilled to have you here today, and we're answering questions that you guys have written in on the live feature, and someone wanted to know, will my son ever talk?
Yes, this is one of the most concerning areas for a lot of parents, especially if your child, is as getting older and 3 or 4 years old and still does not have any phrase speech, like even 2 to 3 word phrase speech. And the typical development of phrase speech is, in the 2 to 3 year old range. And so, especially if you have friends with younger children, there's an explosion of language that seems to happen. And if your child isn't making those steps, it could be very scary. But a recent study was just released this last year in pediatrics, and it was specifically on the being able to predict and determine how many children will actually develop phrase speech or even fluent speech after the age of 4. And they took a population of children with autism and separated them into groups of no phrase speech, and then fluent speech. And then they specifically looked at the children with no phrase speech at all to see at 8 years old how many had developed phrase speech and fluent speech. And they found that 70% of children who had no phrase speech before the age of 4 developed phrase speech by the age of 8.
That's pretty impressive.
So, yeah, that's very impressive. And for looking at that, a 4-year-old with no, very little, like few words and no phrase speech, that's it could be very daunting going into the next few years. But there's hope, and a lot of ABA work too will definitely help with this. But additionally, 47% of these children with no phrase speech at 4 years old develop fluent speech by 8 years old. So if your child is, under the age of 4 and you're worried about this, there is hope, and there is a study suggesting that the majority of children will develop at least phrase speech, which is, a couple word phrases, and that will help them to communicate their needs.
Absolutely.
And but if you're one of those parents who has a child who is older than that and still does not have a lot of words and especially phrase speech or fluent speech, there are methods to help your child communicate, and the communication is the most important part. Sometimes I have worked with children who just do not develop speech for one reason or another, and a speech pathologist could speak to that more.
Right.
And give more information about that. But I have seen a lot of children be able to communicate very well using iPads or
Yes.
other forms of computers where they could type and communicate with the world in that way. And so having speech is not necessarily a problem later in life if the child has a means to communicate.
Yeah, I think it's important that we acknowledge that for families watching, that the hope is to get as many children to the point where you have vocal speech. I mean, that's what we all want. That's
course.
in our heart of hearts, that's what we want. But we have to, at a certain point, say the most important thing in the moment with our children is functional communication. That you're not going to even. I know a lot of parents who feel like, well, if we go to use an iPad for speech, we'll have given up. We'll have given up and we'll never get to that vocal speech. But I know you guys have talked before that research shows clearly that that's not the case.
Yeah.
That one quick way to get a child to vocal speech is by giving them first functional communication on another device or with a picture exchange system or signing. So it's not giving up, and that our first and foremost goal has to be that functional communication.
Exactly. Being able to get their needs met through communicating appropriately with other people, and that might not be vocal at a certain point, but also it could also be the chance that with an iPad or something like that, it's just easier for the child to press buttons than to actually try to emit these vocalizations that are very difficult. And again, a speech pathologist could say like the different musculature of speech sounds, but what we do in ABA is that even though we would give a child a communication system like PECS or an iPad or something like that to use, we also still focus on getting the child to speak and vocalize sounds. Even the smallest, when you see someone say hi,
yes,
or even make that sound to attempt to do that. So we definitely keep pushing forward on that, and we don't give up on vocalizations just because we gave the child a different way to communicate. But we know from what we know about challenging behavior, a lot of it has to do with the child communicating his or her needs in an appropriate way.
Right.
So giving the child that way to communicate is always best.
It's key.
Yeah.
Absolutely key. Great advice. And very hopeful to know that the vast majority of our kids are going to get to that speech. And even if they're starting later, very exciting.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take another break, and we're going to come back and have Angela Persicke, BCBA, answer another question. Stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's gonna play football, he's gonna do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, you know, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What
yeah.
did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle, and without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready?
There you go, got it.
Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here. We've been laughing through the break. Angela Persicke is here, and she's a board-certified behavior analyst. And maybe I should jump to, because I think this one is really important that we talk about. Somebody had written in, and this is a very serious topic. This is not what we were laughing at. I want to get that going. Okay, so you can see, my son is 3.5 years old and doesn't yet understand many basic things which children of other ages do. At times I feel it is because I didn't engage myself to teach him aggressively from 1 year itself. I felt always he is not ready for understanding. Now he repeats what we ask him to say, including questions, but does not understand most of it. Overall, he is diagnosed as developmental delay and that he may fall in the spectrum, but it's difficult to go except I just wish he outgrows it. What can we do to help him understand and soon so that by age 5 he is completely at par with his age groups? Now there's a bunch of different things in there that I want to point out, and then I want for Angela Persicke to talk about. Because this is sort of textbook for a lot of different things in here. The parent saying, I feel that it's because I didn't engage myself to teach him aggressively enough. The first thing that I want to say to all of you is that there will be enough people to stand in line and say that this is in some way your fault, your responsibility, you didn't do. And, the technical term I use for that here on the show is that's a steaming pile of poo. You are an awesome parent, and there are some things things that your child did not pick up on that other children just do. And the fact that you didn't get it on the first day means that you are human. No one would have. But you see something now, your gut says something's not right, it's not working out, and that he doesn't understand it, and your gut is saying we need to do something about it. And you're absolutely right, those instincts are absolutely right. The one where you wish and hope that he will outgrow it, this is the one that you need to put that far, far out of your head, because that is not going to happen. The thing that we were laughing about was that I said, you know, I feel as though because the press last year did a number and put out all these different articles that said apparently some kids outgrow autism, but if you read the articles and read the study, that's not what it said. I would like to personally take every single person who put the headline saying that you could outgrow autism and take them to task for it. And I said I'd like to, you know, emblazon across my body, you know, you cannot outgrow autism, so that we all get on the same page on that. I love Lisa Ackerman from TACA says, when somebody says it's autism, it is not game over, it's game on. Yes. So now I'm going to turn it over, but you have not done anything wrong. You're an awesome parent, and you're looking for ways to help your child, and that's what's going to get it done. Now I'm going to have you listen to our expert here about what you need to do. So go for it.
And first, I want to commend you, like as a parent too, that you are noticing these things and you're on it and you're ready to do what you need to do, so that your child at age 5 is up to par and catching up with peers. I also want to first mention too something you said, Shannon, about what other children just seem to pick up on in the environment. And so again, this has nothing to do with you and what steps you could have taken as a parent. So again, put that aside, because you are already, I can tell that you've done an amazing job. But it's something that children, neurotypical children just seem to pick up naturally, the socialization and communication
and that
skills,
receptive language.
And the receptive language, and it seems to just happen, and it seems very magical, especially when, for me, who has worked with so many children with autism, when I see a neurotypical child, and like between the ages of 1 and 3, it seems so magical, and so. You know, like I said, like this is nothing that, you know, you should have on your plate. This is autism. Again, this is autism, and this is what it looks like a lot of times. But also with something like being diagnosed with a developmental delay, we'll see this a lot with children, sometimes under 3, where they'll be given something like that, developmental delay or speech delay, or also an at-risk diagnosis of autism. And there are a lot of people making efforts recently to find these kids and start intervention even earlier. So as soon as they see, even at the age of 1, that there are some of these deficits in social communication, which you can see at 1 with what we call joint attention, so the child pointing at something to get the parent to also look and join in that interest and in that event with the child, sharing interests, and a few other things related to socialization that you can see very early. But in general, what you want to do now is find an ABA provider and get your child into a program and the services that whatever state you're in, try to contact a provider that's nearby. If you go to the Center for Autism website, it lists all the locations of CART offices. You could call a CART office as well.
And that would be the first thing that I would ask you to do is go to centerforautism.com, click on the location, see if one is close to you. I say that to you as a parent because that's who my child got help with, and I know that they have quality ABA and they therapy that they deliver, and that they deliver it in so many different locations that chances are you might be close to one. Are they the only ABA provider in the world? They're not. Are they the only quality ABA provider in the world? No, thank goodness they're not, because they can't be in all places at all time. But I can give you a direct recommendation that you're going to get good services at CARD. There are lots of other ABA providers, and you can go to autismspeaks.com, go to their resources page, put in your zip code. It will give you a list of a bunch of resources, including ABA providers. And then what I would encourage you to do is look further down the list and see what the parent support groups are in that area. Go to the parent support groups and say, hey, I'm looking at the list of ABA providers, who does good quality, and get a bunch of parents to tell you that somebody gives good quality ABA therapy. Don't trust just one. Make sure that, because they may not know. That may be the only place that they've dealt with, and they may not know a reference point. I'll be honest with you, when my child was at CARD, I didn't know how good I had it. It took years of other people telling me what their ABA provider did before I went, oh, your ABA provider doesn't do X, Y, and Z, and go to the IEP meeting with you and do all the, and you're, yeah, I could tell you horror stories. The things that I've heard from other people there, one in particular that always, I shudder when I think about it, that the child threw a tantrum, and so the therapist packed up their stuff for the day and said, I can't work with him if he's going to throw a tantrum. Excuse me? That's what you're there for. That's the difference between, one of the many differences between, good ABA therapy, that's when they're going to stay, is when your child throws a tantrum. The first time my child threw a tantrum while there was an ABA therapist from CARD in the home, he was supposed to leave my house. He was scheduled to leave the house, and he said, no, I've already called ahead and I'm staying here through this tantrum with you. This is what we're here for. We're going to stay, not I'm packing up because he had a tantrum. So make sure you get good quality ABA therapy, right? But correct me if I'm wrong, because I am seeing an epidemic of people who, fortunately, their children are doing so well that they just don't qualify for the diagnosis, but the parent is concerned. And what I'm hearing doctors say is, well, that at risk that you were saying, so we'll check back in 2 years, or we'll check back in a year, when what we know is that child would benefit right now and may never get the diagnosis if they got the help now and got them caught up.
Yes, there are some providers who take a lot of these children who are younger than 2 and have these at-risk diagnoses, and it's a difficult situation because they don't technically have a diagnosis, and so funding sources might not accept those children and give those children the funding they need to get services, but there are providers who do accept children, especially baby siblings, and who have an older sibling with a diagnosis. Sometimes they are more likely to get a diagnosis from the professional, but also for these individuals, what we're seeing is that sometimes they have fewer skills to catch up on because they're not as far behind as maybe like a 4 or 5 year old who is just starting to get services. But also there's this possibility, because a lot of challenging behaviors are due to this inability to communicate appropriately and interact appropriately with the environment and other people, that there are sometimes fewer challenging behaviors for younger children as well. So what we're seeing across a couple different providers is that sometimes children who get in early get services for a year and are caught up and never get the diagnosis. And for some people that might be scary, like that, oh, they won't get a diagnosis, so then we're just left behind. But a good quality ABA provider will not just let a child go at that point. And there have been some published case studies showing that a child that was given an at-risk diagnosis at the age of 1 with 4 years, so by the age of 5 in a kindergarten class, never received a diagnosis. It was completely fine, scored in the average range on all intellectual tests, and required no aid in the classroom. So it's very promising to get your child in early, but if you're noticing deficits now, look for a provider now.
Yeah. And, and we always say on the show that no one on the show can provide child-specific advice. We don't know what all your circumstances are. But I am going to say to you as a parent that now is the moment to act. That every day that you wait, if your child is behind, if they come to the table behind, what happens is they just get further behind. It's very difficult, next to impossible. I would say it is impossible for a child to catch themselves up. Yeah. And so if your gut is saying he's behind now, don't let him get another day behind. And we know that this is what works, that ABA works, and it works regardless excuse me, of what the diagnosis is or isn't. If the child is behind, ABA is what's going to catch them up. It is the only thing shown to be effective at catching kids up, and it's efficient. So I would be checking that out. Write back to us if you're having difficulties. Let us know where you live. You guys, whenever we're talking to you, one of the first things I write back is, where do you live? And I wish it was so I could send you a fruit basket, but that's not why I'm asking, because then what I do is I hop online and check out what services are close by for you, what your insurance mandate is in the state that you're in, what the likelihood is that you're going to be able to get funding, because I know that if I can say to you, hey, you've got funding here, it's going to be easier for you. It's not over if you don't, but it's going to be easier, and I'll know which direction to send you down to help you make it a little bit more efficient. I said to my niece today in the car, I said, I wish, like if I could make a wish, if I had, we've been talking about Oprah all day long, if I had Oprah money, what I would love to do is just take this show on the road. Somebody would write in and say, hey, this is what we're going through, and we could put somebody on a plane to go there and say, hey, you're going to the spa for today, and while you're at the spa, leave your insurance card here. We're going to get to work on finding what your resources are, so when you come back, we're going to have saved you a month's worth of legwork so that you're going to have a plan at the end of the day. How cool would that be? And I know, and it's funny because we were also talking about Polly Tomey yesterday, and it was Polly Tomey's birthday yesterday. Polly Tomey, an incredible woman, hosts the Autism Network. I think that's the name of the Autism Network, and she also hosts Autism Mommies on Facebook. She does like the British version of this, but now she's living in Texas, in Austin, Texas. But Polly has been trying to sell a show to the networks called The A-Team, where basically it's something like that, but they take a whole team of people in. So Dr. Doreen Granpeche comes into your house, Julie Matthews comes into your house, you get the biomedical doctor that comes in your house, and they structure your life for you so that you get a running start for an autism family. How brilliant, how excited would you be to have the A-Team come to your home and get you started? Every family needs it. But, well, in any case, in the meantime, until we have Oprah money, you're gonna have to do this, and we'll try to help point you to resources. But ABA and ABA now. Let go of the idea that he's going to outgrow it. It just doesn't happen. That is a myth, and it's a bad myth. So we've got another question that we're going to have you answer. One I said I could have written this question about a 10-year-old swearing. I have a 10-year-old that swears. We can have a mind meld on this. So we'll be back more with Angela Persicke after these messages.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son, Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free. All
Which is
provided.
wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with board certified behavior analyst, BCBA. When I say that, that's what I'm meaning. Angela Persicke, and so thrilled to have you here. You're answering questions that people have written in. I mentioned before we went to break that this is one I could have written myself. So somebody is out there. I'm feeling that Vulcan mind meld with you. The question is, my 10-year-old son is obsessed with swearing. Yes, I'm familiar with that. He swears whenever he can and finds it hilarious if someone else swears. I mentioned it to another mom and she said it's a phase that boys go through at that age. What should I do? Punish him for swearing or just ignore it or something in between? Okay.
Yeah, so this is always a or a difficult topic, just because swearing in our society it's never just something easy that we can talk about, especially if we have children on this spectrum who don't necessarily understand audience variables, who I should say what in front of, and something like swearing is not it's not consistently punished or reinforced with the people, with anybody. And so you might have you might swear in front of your friends and they'll reinforce it and it'll be fine and it might make you even more popular. And then in front of your grandma, she's going to punish it. And in a teacher in a classroom, of course she's going to punish it. And so like other approaches, you know, that we take for every single behavior, where we try to find the function. Is it attention? A lot of times swearing is for attention, because look at all the attention it gets all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do your best to ignore it. You go to the grocery store and one person in the grocery store says, "Wow, why are you saying that? You're only 10. You shouldn't be saying those words," and gives it a lot of attention.
Right.
So it's a very, very difficult point, and it's fun for kids, and some of the words even have some properties about them that make them fun to say.
They're percussive. That's why I like to say them. They're percussive.
Exactly.
It feels good when you're you know?
Exactly. And so some of the approaches I've seen people use for this within behavior analysis is not just your typical don't provide attention for it, which you would do, but teaching your child to discriminate between who to say it in front of and how to say these words, and also that the words can be said to yourself in your head, and if there's something about the words themselves, like or said alone when no one else is around, and so teaching your child to discriminate between these different audiences, and even giving some rules of when it's okay and when it's not. And I've even seen an approach where if there is just an instance where your child it's just, you know, maybe it's toy breaks or something like that, where it's something that most of us would probably use a swear word for, sometimes even giving your child the opportunity to say it will just be okay, like almost like a one-time pass.
Right.
Okay, you can say it this one time.
Right.
And but again, you do have to look at what is your child getting out of it. Are you constantly giving attention to it when, especially at home, if your child's constantly cussing and using swear words, are you consistently saying, stop, don't say that, that's not okay, we don't say that, and talking about it. And for a lot of 10-year-olds, it's really funny. Yeah. It's really funny to get those reactions out of people. Yeah. And think about it that way too. What reaction are you giving? Even if you're trying to ignore it, I'm sure your face shows something. Yeah. And so it's something to look at like that. But I think the best approach is to teach discrimination between when it's okay and when it's not. Because for swearing, like I said, there will be occasions where it just won't be ignored, it won't be punished, and it will.
Yeah, it's hard to, that's what I'm seeing in our house. It's hard to get a handle on it. And I freely admit that I have a problem with this, that I like the percussive sounds and use the percussive sounds. And it's interesting because I had actually asked Dr. Tarbox this question myself on the air months ago and said, we were talking about it during the break, and I said, well, let's come back and share it, right? Because it's keeping it real. And that my child has a problem, and I freely admitted it, that, I use words, and that it's reinforcing to me because my husband laughs when I say an inappropriate word. I know you think less of me now. But let's remember that there are a bunch of other things I don't do, right? Yes. Right? And this is one of my last vices, that I enjoy colorful language. And I, obviously, this is one of the conversations that my son and I had recently, because we were trying to teach discrimination, and he had an infraction with it. And I said, okay. And I was talking to him, and he said, but Mom, you swear. And I said, yes, you're absolutely right, I do. Do you know how many shows I have done of Autism Live? And I have to be very careful, because now that I say this, I'm going to slip up. But I said, do you know how many shows of Autism Live that I have done? And we're approaching our 400th episode, right? And that's 2 hours a pop. So, that's many, many hours. And I said, do you know how many times I have messed up and used an inappropriate swear word during the show? And he said, I don't know, like 4 times. And I said, no, none. I have never. And I used to be a classroom teacher, and I taught college, and I said, do you know how many times I inappropriately swore in the classroom? None. And if you can't discriminate when is appropriate and when it's not, then you're not old enough to swear. So are you old enough to swear, was what I said to him, because if you are, then you won't use it at these times, and then here are the times when it is appropriate for you. And that seemed to register with him a little bit. We haven't had a problem in a couple of weeks, because we did have a problem. He typed something on his computer at school for an assignment, and then, but this was the funny thing about it, was that then the teacher called me about it and said, this is not appropriate, right? Because it's not. And I talked to him about it, and I said, so, he said, my computer is blanked up. Right, and we talked about why that wasn't appropriate. But here was the other interesting thing about it. I said, so you did this? He said, oh no, I didn't do it. And I said, well, it came from your computer. So I think that you should fess up and own up to the fact that you did it. And he went through this elaborate lie of, I think what happened is that last year somebody was typing on that computer, they put the word in, so I spell checked it, and when and he came up with some other word that started with the same letter, and he said, I wrote this, and when I spell checked it, the computer changed it, which I thought, now that's a really extensive lie. Yeah. That is a young man who understands lying and understands that my perspective on this, that he's going to be in trouble, and he's, and so we had a discussion about that. I said, that's a really good lie. Yeah. It's a fabulous lie. Here's the deal. You're not going to get in trouble, but you need to tell me the truth. Yeah. And then this last week we've had the discussion about, because always before I've said I won't punish you for having told a lie, because we were trying to teach lying, right? But I said, now you have it. You thoroughly have it. You're an accomplished liar now. So you got to start telling me the truth, and you got to tell the first time out, because each time that you lie about it, the consequences for it will be different.
Yes. That's great, and that's really, really great that also that you noticed how complex his perspective taking skills had become.
You know, that is an autism mom thing.
Yep.
All my friends, we will have this thing at some point in the year where somebody will write and say, you know, so and so told a lie, and I told a friend who has neurotypical kids, and she said I'm sorry, and I was going woo. Yeah. You know, so that is very much an autism mom thing. When our kids lie, we get very excited and go, isn't this great? And it was such an extensive lie.
It was well thought out, and he thought of the audience, and that was that was
and
really
he had
great.
this not feasible, but in his head feasible. It was the spell check. Someone else did it. It's pretty inventive.
Yes.
There's creativity.
The really good things to point out about that, but and it's important also for moms to think of these things when you're out there, and like the fact that your child's swearing. One thing that especially when little kids start swearing who have autism, like, you know, a 5 or 6 year old. And it usually gets a lot of reactions at first, but I always like to point out, well, did they use it in the appropriate way?
There you go.
And so that's one thing to think of too. Oh, they picked up on this word that was probably only used maybe even once or twice in front of them, and they used it appropriately.
Yes.
That's progress.
Yes.
But again,
it's all perspective, right?
Teaching discrimination is, I think, the most important part of tackling something like this.
Now, somebody wrote in and said, my son would use bad words, so one thing we did was create the kids' version of those words. We told them when he's our age, he can use the adult version. And I will tell you, too, we have done that also and had some fun with it about creating swear words. And when he started, I tried not to have him watch SpongeBob for the longest time, and then I succumbed to it. And they do that in SpongeBob. They say, oh, fish paste, and oh, barnacles, and, you know, they have all the fish words that are the appropriate things. And that worked for a while, and that's still a placeholder for him in settings where it is appropriate. But so many of the kids on the playground, and it is that currency you were saying about, you know, it's how they talk to each other. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I set a bad example at home. You know, and I think that's, you know, part of where, and my husband and I have talked about that, and I've said, you know, I have to tone it down, and I've tried sometimes, and then I'll have a slip up. It's, you know, it starts and ends with me. But I think this is really good advice, too.
Yes.
Having those other words that have percussives, I mean, saying, oh, barnacles. You know, I went to graduate school, and a lot of people in my class in graduate school were they were a religion that they did not swear. And so they had lots of creative other terms that we all got good at using that were not swear words but had those percussive sounds and that were really kind of fun. And I'm sure I just need to be better about that. But it is a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And one thing to add to that too, if you find that it's really the reaction that your child likes to get out of you in saying these words, if you give replacement words like these, you have to make sure for the first couple times to react in the same way. Just like if you use the word fluff, you know, fluff or something like that, and you're like, oh, what did you say? You know, especially for some kids that are younger, because if it's the reaction, you have to react the same way to these replacement words, or otherwise, why would they use it? They'll just go back to saying the other ones.
That would not have occurred to me to give that whole thing again, because that might be the paycheck for it.
Yep.
Interesting.
And it might not be, again. It might be something else, and it might be this differential reinforcement that the kids are receiving at school. But if you notice that every time you react, your child's laughing and says it more, you might want to try that approach.
It's interesting because, you know, so much, even on television now, people will say things and they bleep them. There's commercials where it's just people being bleeped out. And my son will just fall apart. He giggles and is like, you know, rewind, I want to see it again. He finds it so hilarious. It's, as this person wrote in, it's just very reinforcing. In any case, we're out of time, so we want to say goodbye to Angela Persicke. Thank you so much. We'll look forward to having you here next week. We're going to take a pause, say goodbye to Angela, and we'll come back to finish out the show. Stick with us. There's been another new study about optimal outcomes, and I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on recovery? Do you think it's possible? Do you believe in recovery from autism?
On recovery, you learn how to adapt. I mean, I've had a lot of experimental brain scans done, and they have found things that are definitely abnormal. I have an enlarged left ventricle that's definitely abnormal. That's not going to go away. That scan was done less than 5 years ago. But you work with someone and they adapt. You're not going to make me an algebra specialist. That's just not going to happen. But things like getting better at public speaking, that is something that I gradually learned. What I'm seeing today, especially with some of the kids on the mild end of the spectrum, I'm seeing teenagers that are much milder than me that haven't learned things like how to go up to the counter at McDonald's and order food all by themselves, how to go on the bus, how to shop, how to go in the store and shop, how to do a checkbook, basic things like that. Because what drives me crazy is when I go back to the cattle world and I see a guy in the maintenance shop that's running the whole maintenance shop at a big plant, and he's as Asperger's as he can be, and he's running a whole maintenance shop. And then I see Junior that's addicted to video games, and you can't get his duff off his chair and get him doing things. Now, when I was in high school, I did a lot of thinking about this. I got kicked out of a large girls' school for throwing a book, and I went to a special boarding school up on a farm, and I was allowed to work with the farm animals. And they let me goof off and not study. But I got to thinking, there's one thing they did not let me do. I goofed off and I didn't study, but I had to physically go to class. When I didn't want to go to the Friday night movie, they made me the projectionist. One thing they were not going to let me do is sit in my room, become a recluse in my room. They were not going to allow that.
I want to know why you threw the book. Why did you throw it?
Oh, I threw a book at a girl because she called me a retard.
Oh, good reason.
Oh, no,
to throw
she
it at.
teased me. And I had some problems getting in fights when kids teased me. But it was always brought about by someone picking on me. And the principal had me kicked out of school, out of a large girls' school for doing that.
And what'd your mom say?
Well, she was not very happy about the whole thing, because when the principal called, I answered the phone and he said I was incorrigible and I was kicked out of school. Mother was really angry that he just said that right directly to me, which was definitely not very appropriate.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here at the end of the show, and so I just wanted to take a second to recap and let you know what's happening tomorrow. We will be here tomorrow, Friday. We will have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox with us for the second hour, and we will have Dr. Adele Nadowski in the first hour. We will take your questions, and we've already sent in a bunch of questions to them, and more have come in that we will let them know about. Also, a couple of things coming up. We won't be here again on Monday because we're trying to get ourselves caught up, so the programming will continue on Tuesday for next week. But we've been talking about, and at some point in this next minute or so, Emily will start to show you some of the ways you can get in contact with us in the middle, in between. I have three things I'm thinking of at the same time. I want to make sure that I remind those of you who live in the state of New York that there are two different events coming up where you can get more information about insurance and some of the coverage that has changed for those of you in New York State. I tell you that it makes me not sleep at night, and I need my sleep, but there are so many of you who are there that the coverage has changed, and you do have access to your ABA therapy now. I know that a couple of months ago you were running up against a brick wall, but it is there now, and you need to, as quickly as you possibly can, begin to access it. The lines are going to start to form. So if you need help with that, if you're not already working with your ABA provider to get help with that, there are these two wonderful events that are coming up on the 26th and the 28th of September. You can find them, go to the centerforautism.com page, go to the events. You'll see their interactive calendar, and you can go to the 26th and the 28th, and you can click on, there's more than just one event on the 28th, but it's the Autism Today conference. Click on that and you can find out about how you can attend these events. I know that the one on the Thursday night is in Fairport, the other one is in Glendale, that's on the Saturday. The Thursday night, it's just Bryce Myler, who we had on the show on Tuesday, talking and answering parents' questions about what's happening, and that is a free, and it's just you're just there for the insurance. Now, the one in Glendale on Saturday is a full day of speakers and amazing resources. So if you're in Glendale, New York, you'll want to go to that one, but you can get more information about them on that centerforautism.com events tab at the top. You get the calendar, click on the 26th or the 28th, whichever event that you're more interested in. I also want to remind you we're going to continue to talk about tantrums and meltdowns, but if you give us some specifics, we'll try to cover those as much as we can tomorrow with Dr. Nadowski and with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. I want you to be thinking in the next day or so, looking at your behavior, looking for those A's, B's, and C's that we talked about before. What happened before the behavior? What's the behavior? What's the consequence? And maybe start to take a little bit of notes on the person in your life who's having tantrums, when they're having them, what's happening around them, what happened right before the tantrum happened. Sometimes you don't see a pattern unless you start to write it down. It doesn't become visible until you've written it down. I've shown before on the show just taking a regular piece of paper, and Emily's going to start to show you, and you separated it, you folded it into 3 columns. You write A, B, and C. And whenever the child engages in a behavior that you consider tantrum or meltdown, you're going to write down the things in the 3 columns. You write down what the behavior looked like, how long did it last, what time did it last. You write down what happened right before. Did you just ask them to pick up their crayons, or did you put them in the bathtub, or you picked them up from daycare? You know, you start to see a pattern, and then write what was the consequence. There's no guilt, no shame. If you gave them a lollipop, just to get them out of the tantrum, be honest and write it down. But you will start to see things that these tantrums have in common. And if you end up needing the help of a BCBA, which if the tantrums persist, you're going to want the help of a BCBA, you'll hand them this piece of paper, and that will save you a lot of time and a lot of money, because you'll be giving them data that really is meaningful to them to find the solution. And we'll continue to talk with the BCBAs about what those solutions are. But by the way, lest you should forget, there are solutions. There's help, there's hope. We do know how to make tantrums greatly reduce or go away. And that is tied to the functional communication of being able to convey what their needs are. I don't want to run out of time, because the last couple of times we've run out of time. So I'll remind you that stay in tune with us. Tell your friends about us. We've got something really exciting coming up tomorrow, a study that I'm going to tell you how you can participate in. And if you participate in the study, some of you are going to get a free Roku. More about that tomorrow, so you're going to want to tune in for that, a study that will help us out. We're out of time. Please join us tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.